Right here. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and get started tonight. Welcome everybody to the Saratoga Whiskey Club, tasting number 150.
Wow.
Yeah.
Woo! Yeah.
Pretty good.
We all get a free bottle tonight.
Not one of ours.
No. But it was less than a year ago. We had John and Lorri here for Raising Glasses Part 1. John and Lorri both own Raising Glasses, which is an independent bottling company here in the US that specializes in lots of things. And John's gonna, and Lorri will go over all of those things here shortly. But we have a really fun tasting tonight where we're mixing it up with 3 scotches, 3 American single malts, and finishing up with a rum. And then they brought, sorry for the people online, but they did bring a little bit of sherry and wine to taste side by side to see what some of these barrels or these whiskeys are finished in, which is pretty fun. But yeah, let's go ahead and get started. For those online and those in person, we do have a scorecard. It was in the email today. If you want to use that, you can, no pressure. But yeah, more than anything, let's just enjoy it. We do have all of these available too for purchase. So if anybody's interested in any of these bottles, we have them all up here in the front, and they're all very reasonable too. So excited to get this started, and yeah, so let's do this. I'll get out of your way. Yep.
Thank you. Oh, there they are.
We've been waiting for you.
Sorry.
We apologize.
If I go front, I gotta pay. We've got one seat over there too.
Yeah, there's one up there too.
All right. There's one up front or back.
There's 2 in 1, yeah.
All right, we just need the PowerPoint up whenever you get, whenever you get a chance. Okay, all right, thanks everybody for coming. For those of you who saw us last time, I don't know why you came back, but we'll try to do better. So we are Raising Glasses. You're looking at the entire company right here. So I'm John Shu, and this is my business partner and wife, Lorri Kern. And we are single cask importers. We mostly do whiskey and rum. So we'll be doing both of those today.
You guys have HR problems, the two of you?
You have no idea.
As long as they remember Sue's box, it's all good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Looks like we've got, yeah, we're stuck on volume. Is the PowerPoint the live app right now?
Yeah.
Okay.
You want me to
Sure. Okay. Yeah, next slide, please.
Maybe.
Hold you only one slide.
Okay.
So that's the whole presentation.
Okay, great. Don't drink any.
Best PowerPoint ever.
Want to keep it nice and snappy. So we are independent bottlers. Most of you probably know what that means, but for those of you who don't, we essentially curate casks from all over the world. We bottle them under our own label. We don't make the stuff. We just take all the credit for all the hard work that other people put into it. We are also licensed to be wholesalers and distributors in Massachusetts. So for spirits companies and distillers who want to get their products into Massachusetts, we're able to bring those in as well. That's not the reason we did it. The real reason we did it was so that we could control exactly where our bottles went to. Because otherwise, basically, if you're the label, you give your bottles to a distributor and they do whatever they want.
Or not.
Or they just sit on it forever. So we didn't want that happening. So that's why we decided to take control of our own destiny. We're back in the same mode. Charles, can we? Go ahead. Okay, so yeah, we want to thank Charles and Holly. This was actually one of our favorite places to shop. Luckily, we don't live close enough to go broke, but we could easily go broke. And we had an awesome time the last time we did a presentation here. So thanks for bringing us back. We go pretty far back with Holly, back when she was in Boston, and she was actually one of the people who really expanded our whiskey knowledge. So being able to form a company that deals with whiskey and then come here and present in her store is kind of it's funny how destiny works. We feel like we've come full circle. So a little bit of bookkeeping. So today's lineup, so we'll be doing 7 tastings. Like Charles said, we'll be doing 3 whiskeys, 3 American single malts, 3 scotches, 3 American single malts, and 1 rum as well. In addition to that, we do have 4 pairings. The concept behind this tasting was that people really love whiskeys when you mature them in sherry or Madeira or some kind of dessert wine. But when you ask all these people who say like, oh yeah, I love Oloroso, sherry, matured whiskeys, and I ask them, have you ever actually tasted Oloroso sherry? 9 times out of 10 people are like, no, I have no idea what that tastes like. So we thought it would be interesting to have you drink the whiskey and then drink the cask that it was matured in. We also have a final pairing. It's a little chocolate truffle. That is actually made with the rum. That is our 7th pairing. So don't eat that until you get the rum. We have a few backups, but not enough for all of you. So another thing is these are all high proof spirits. So I believe the lowest ABV on them is I think 57%, and they just go up from there. So water is your friend. We have colored water droppers next to you if you want to add water to your whiskeys. I actually add them to just about everything that you see on your table. Lorri never adds water to anything. She wants them all full strength. The water droppers are yours to take if you like. They are. Yeah, not the big fancy ones, but the little colored water droppers are yours to take if you like. They're engraved with our logo, so you remember who the hell we are. Some people do ask, like, so which is the best flavor? They're all just full of water. It's the glass that's colored. Okay, so one of my pet peeves when we're doing tastings, when we're attending tastings, is that somebody stands up here and just talks and talks and talks and talks, and the whole hour goes by, and then you finally get to taste something. So I always said, if we ever do our own presentations, we're going to get liquid into your mouths as soon as possible. So why don't we start with the very first one? So the very first one, if you were at our last tasting here, we brought this one back. So this one's called Emergence. It is from the Linkwood Distillery in Scotland. It is from the Speyside region. It is a 9-year-old Linkwood, and it spent all 9 years in a sherry butt. So the thing that we like about Linkwood is, although it's from Speyside, so you do get your classic honey notes, you get your orchard fruit notes, it's light, it's elegant. Linkwood has a little more guts to it. You can probably tell from the mouthfeel, it's a little heavier, it's a little oilier, sits on your palate a little longer, lengthens out the finish. It's what I like to call the gutsier Speyside from that. You put that in 9 years in an Oloroso sherry butt. It'll add some of those classic sherry fruit, fig, nut flavors. But if you have done a lot of heavily sherried scotches, you'll notice that this is quite light. And you may ask yourself, why is it so light considering it spent 9 years in a sherry butt? Well, the answer is that it's a refill sherry butt. So it probably had several whiskeys coming through it. So what you've got here is an unusual mix of a very light barrel, because it's a refill, but it spent all 9 years in that sherry barrel. So the sherry is very well integrated into the distillate, but it doesn't like really punch you in the face. But like, yeah, it's a sherry. That'll be the next one. This is cask strength. That is 60.6 ABV. And suggested retail on this is about $85, $90. So you probably don't see, okay, this is probably the only place where you actually probably see a good amount of Linkwoods, but generally you don't see a lot of Linkwoods because it's owned by Diageo and they put most of their Linkwoods into their blends. They don't tell you what's in all the different Johnny Walkers, but it's pretty well acknowledged that Linkwood is a major component of many Johnny Walkers. So when you do see a Linkwood, it's usually from an independent bottler like us. Gordon and MacPhail makes a Linkwood 15, which is usually the first Linkwood that many people taste. Signatory has a lot of good Linkwoods as well. Okay, so in terms of just tasting notes that I haven't covered already, the real reason we picked this cask was just straight from the nose. The second that we smelled it, it was just out that gorgeous florality. It could almost be a perfume. You could try that tonight, see how your night goes. We just love the nose on it. Then on top of that, obviously you get your fruits, you get your honeys, and like we said, get that nice subtle sherry influence from it as well. Okay, so while you're enjoying that, we'll tell you a little bit about us and where we came from. So we are, I hate this term, but serial entrepreneurs, which is only slightly less worse than a serial killer. So we start, excuse me?
Fewer bodies.
Yes, well, I don't know. You should have seen some of the companies that didn't go so well. Yeah, we started up a lot of companies in a lot of different industries. So we've done technology, we've done market research, spent a decade in the music business. Some of them were very successful, some of them were spectacularly unsuccessful. So this is our first startup in the beverage industry. So we spent many years as fans of whiskey and rum, but we always thought it would be cool someday if we could actually have a business and do this for real. So we did start about 3 years ago. This will definitely be our last startup because we forgot how hard it is to do a startup. By far, this is the hardest startup we've ever done. It is the least profitable startup we've ever done, and it's also the most fun startup we've ever done. So, we're very happy to have moved into that.
No money, but a lot of fun.
Yeah, isn't that what everybody wants?
First fill is nonprofit.
Us as well, we should go on the final.
So we actually got our start just as consumers. We got some casks from New Riff and shared those with friends and family and acquaintances. We brought those empty casks to Privateer Distillery, which is a rum distillery in northern Massachusetts, and we did a bunch of runs of those, and we thought, hey, people seem to like what we're making, so someday, again, it would be nice to do this on a professional level. So fast forward to the year 2020, I got an offer to buy my software company, which I had in for 22 years, and had a very drunken, nasty, I went into a long story last time we did this, and I'm gonna just shorten it down, just say there was vomit and Uber and regrets, but we still successfully sold the company the next day. 5 days later, the pandemic hit, everything shut down. Our software company was in the market research industry, so basically, retail, and so there's no way we would have survived if we hadn't sold the company. And what's funny is the guy who bought the company said if it had been 5 days later, he would have killed the deal. Yeah. Whew, that was close. That was close. Better to be lucky than good. Yeah, exactly. And it was definitely, I didn't actually want to sell the company, but my partner was like, we really got to do this. And so it all worked out. The company this year was listed as the #5 company on the Inc. 5000 list. So the Inc. 5000 list is a list of the 5,000 fastest growing companies in the country. So they've done really well. All our employees, we put a clause in saying that they couldn't fire any of our employees. Well, they could fire them, they couldn't let them go for a year. So all the employees had a job. This company ended up doing very well, made #5 on the Inc. 5000 list, which I like to brag about it, but on the other hand, they didn't get there until I was gone for 3 years. So I don't know. Maybe that was the key, getting rid of John. Yeah, so they did well, and obviously we got enough money to start our company. So that's how we got our start. Okay, so you've tasted the first in a trilogy. So this trilogy is actually all from one cask. So we got a sherry butt. So a sherry butt is a very, very large cask. So this is a standard American bourbon barrel. You can get about 200-ish bottles, depending on the angel share, of full-size bottles, 750s. A sherry butt can get you up to 550 bottles. So we knew we really liked the Linkwood, but we weren't. Basically, we were cowards. We just didn't think we could sell 500 bottles of the exact same thing. So what we did is we split it into thirds. So the first third, which you tasted here, was the Emergence. The first third, we just bottled as is. The second third, we put into an Oloroso quarter cask to hit it with Oloroso again. So that's what we call the double Oloroso release. And the third one is a Madeira cask. So we put that one in a first fill Madeira cask. So this is kind of an interesting side-by-side tasting of what you can do if you start with a spirit and then you do some perverted things to it. hopefully you'll think it turned out well.
A question, John, about the Emergence. Someone mentioned online that they added water and more spice came out.
Yes, that is a lot of people have said that. Well, first of all, it's 60.6%, which is pretty high. And some people think that putting all water does is just dilute all of the flavors. But it's never linear in terms of what comes up and what comes down. So being able to bring the ABV down a little bit can bring other notes up. So yeah, if they're saying like, okay, now I'm getting some of the spice, that completely makes sense.
Oloroso finally came through, or
Yes. Sometimes the alcohol just stuns everything else that's out there. Okay, so just a little bit about the artwork. The artwork was done by actually the daughter of a friend of ours. She was 15 years old. It's always fun to have underage artists do your whiskey labels. So her name is Mirashu. She actually same last name, but not a relation to ours. She did our first two bottles, which were both Port Dundases.
Very good.
You may remember those. So we had her do this series, and we said, so because it's Linkwood, we would like the labels to be link oriented. So for those of you who are gamers, obviously you're thinking Zelda, Legend of Zelda. So we said, you do Link, but do it as if she was a girl.
I'm on mute, right?
So sure enough, we put that through. The TTB in the US said fine. Scotland said no way.
Yes or no?
Not allowed to do that. So this was the first version that came out. The Scotch Whiskey Association, funny story. Scotch Whiskey Association gets to approve your labels even if you don't sell any of your bottles in Scotland. So so they said, no, it's going to appeal to young Scottish children who will surely run into all of the liquor stores and say they want to buy our bottle, which was not going to happen. So we had to go through several iterations. And finally, what we had to do was get it to the point where the face wasn't shown. We kept aging her up. They kept saying, no. And finally we said, well, if we just hide her face, you can't tell how old she is. And they said, fine. So if you look at any of the labels of these three Linkwoods, that's the reason you don't see her face. Okay, so quick crash course in what sherry is, because obviously all of these, your first two have been matured in sherry. So there are basically 5 types of sherries. They run from your drier ones, which are more kind of akin to white wine, and they go all the way to Pedro Jimenez, which is syrup. It's basically syrup. Okay, so a wide range of sherries. They get made primarily from 2 types of grapes. So Fino, Manzanilla, Amontillado, and Oloroso are done with the Palomino grape. The Pedro Jimenez is done with the PX grape. PX stands for Pedro Jimenez. So how is sherry made? So basically you're making wine, but you let this layer of yeast and yeast byproducts sit on top of it. So this forms a layer which keeps this juice from oxidizing. Okay. And basically it looks super disgusting, but this is what they're trying to do. Actually, with sherry barrels, they don't fill them all the way to the top because they want some of this oxygen here and they want this layer to form so that you can have your so-called biological aging. Okay, so biological aging is just a way to say oxygen-free aging. And that's how you get your lighter sherries. So if you get rid of that floor, that layer of yeast, then you get your so-called oxidative aging. And you'll notice that the sherries get darker as you do more oxidative aging. And that's, well, think of like if you had an apple and you cut it and you just let it sit for a while, well, it's going to turn brown, right? Very much the same for these sherries. So the ones that we'll be tasting today, or you've already tasted one of them, first two are Oloroso, and there will be one that comes up later, which is Pedro Jimenez. Okay, so some things about sherry, they do what they do the so-called Solera aging, where they put the younger spirit on top, and as it ages, they move it down to the lower barrels, and then as that ages, they combine that to the lowest level of barrels, and that's what they pull out to give you your sherry. The difficulty of this is when people ask, well, what is the age of the sherry in this bottle? And the answer is, I don't know. It's a mix of a million different things. So luckily, aging statements for whiskey are pretty heavily regulated. So they can't say like, yeah, it's like 25-year-old whiskey. You know, there might be like one drop of 25-year-old whiskey in it. No, you can't do that. But there are other spirits. Rum is the notorious example, where you have some brands that like to put numbers like 23 to imply that, yeah, this is 23-year-old rum, which is, you know, complete bull. It's definitely not that old.
Can I ask a question, please?
So the Solera aging method has, you know, obviously for sherry, it's a really great way to make sherry. For other spirits, it's a really great way to lie about how old your spirits are. Okay, so getting into the second one. Okay, so let's move to the second one. And I believe we have a pairing with this one. Is that correct? I should probably get the sheet.
Yeah.
Okay. So while you're tasting number two, which is our double Oloroso, so this is the Linkwood that we recast in a quarter cask of Oloroso. We also have a tasting, if you look at the little glass that's next to it, or behind it.
Right behind it.
Right behind it. That is actually Oloroso sherry itself. And I will warn you that as somebody who loved Oloroso sherry matured whiskeys for many, many years, and the first time I tasted Oloroso sherry, I thought it was disgusting because it didn't taste anything like I thought it would. Because the way the sherry tastes is not directly how it affects the taste of the whiskey. So you should be able to taste that if you do a little side by side on that. So because we put a little more aging on this one, this is now a 10-year. You also notice that the ABV has come down a little bit. So now it's at 59% instead of 60%. Obviously, when you're adding more sherry into it, the sherry is a lesser ABV, so your overall ABV is going to come down a little bit. So if you look at the color of the first one versus this one, you'll see that it's gotten quite a bit darker, and that's just from 9 months in an Oloroso quarter cask. So 9 years in refill gives you something that barely looks like, you know, like a honey straw color. 9 months in a younger sherry cask can add a lot of color and also quite a lot of flavor. So hopefully you can tell that you're getting a lot more sherry influence from that. Okay, so if you drink the Oloroso sherry by itself, kind of the notes you're going to get are kind of balsamic vinegar, maybe a little bit of tobacco, some nuttiness, but more like a walnut nuttiness. But when you're tasting its effect on the whiskey itself, that's when you get your classic notes of figs and jam and more sweetness. So it's kind of interesting how it doesn't exactly hit the same way as if when you're tasting it by itself.
John, quick question in the chat about the Solera process.
Mhm.
Do you know if the barrels are rotated, or are they just taking the product and adding it to the lower barrel? They compared it to the balsamic vinegar.
Yes, I don't know much about how they actually do balsamic vinegar. The idea behind the Solera method is that they don't move the barrels.
Don't move, just transferring them.
Right. Yeah. I'm sure they move them over time, but it's not part of the actual process. Okay, so when we're talking about secondary maturations, there are several factors that are involved. So obviously we already covered the number of fills, the number of time that those casks has been used. Two other factors which aren't as obvious is the actual size of the barrel that you're doing maturation in. So you may wonder, when it comes to this Ascendance number 2 in the Linkwood series, why does he keep saying quarter cask, quarter cask, quarter cask? It's because the quarter cask, which is almost a quarter of the size of an American standard barrel, obviously it's much smaller, but because it's smaller, you'll get faster maturation. And the reason for that is, if you've got like a really big barrel, there's a lot of liquid in the middle that's not actually touching any of the wood. Whereas you shrink it down, there's a higher percentage of the liquid that's actually touching wood. So it will age faster. So if you're tasting the Ascendance, you should, in addition to the additional hit of sherry, you should also get an additional hit of oak as well. Okay. And finally, the type of oak that's used can make a big difference. You may hear a lot of these bottlers brag like, oh yeah, it's French oak, or it's Spanish oak, or it's it's true sherry cask from Jerez in Spain. Does that really make a difference where it came from? Yeah, it actually makes a really big difference. The oak genus is a Quercus, but the species, some of the species are Alba, which is your American bourbon type of wood, and then you have Robur, which is European. So if you have a French or Spanish cask, it's this Quercus Robur. So what's the difference? So the American bourbon industry uses Quercus Alba. It's a much softer wood. It's easier to work with, and it gives you those classic bourbon notes of kind of honey, vanilla, caramel, all those things that give bourbon this nice kind of sweetness and roundness. The European oak type is much harder. It's much tighter grain. So I'm not sure exactly why, but what you'll get off of that is more spice notes and more tannic notes than you would from an American oak. So yeah, the number of times you use it, the size, and the type of wood are the three of the biggest factors when it comes to how a cask can affect the taste of a whiskey or a rum. Does that make sense? Yeah.
John, can I ask a question?
Mhm.
So in the US, occasionally we see some other types of oak being used, like Gariana
Yes.
and other things. In Europe, I know sometimes you see Hungarian oak and you see some other things. Are those different species, or are those all Robur?
Yeah, Gariana I think falls into a weird category because it's indigenous to the Pacific Northwest.
Okay.
So yeah, Gariana is well known for being what Westland uses a lot of Gariana. It's also a protected species, so it's yeah, where it falls biologically, I don't quite know. The Hungarian, I'm not sure. I would guess it's probably also Quercus robur. I do know that Musinara, which is a Mongolian oak, that is considered a Quercus robur as well. So European. Yeah. Okay, let's move to the third tasting. So this is, again, that same Linkwood, but this time we put it into a first fill Madeira cask. So this has got a real blast of Madeira, because other than aging Madeira, it has never been used for anything else. So again, another 9 months, push the age up to 10 years. This brought the ABV down even more. So it's gone from 60% to about 58%, which is actually probably not that surprising, because if you've ever seen a first fill cask, sometimes it can have as much as, I think somebody once said it could have as much as 5 gallons of the original liquid still soaked in the wood, if not sloshing around in the bottom.
That's what they told us about our new riff.
Oh,
We
yeah.
took a privateer, Maggie Campbell, who's one of the best master distillers. She told us, yeah, there's like 5 gallons still left in the wood that gets infused into whatever you put into the wood next.
Yeah, which is just astonishing. So obviously that's going to add a lot to the flavor, but it's also going to bring the ABV down. Okay. So Madeira, what is Madeira? Most people don't know. And to be honest, until I actually had to do this slideshow, I barely knew Madeira was either. Okay. So Madeira is a dessert wine, so it falls in that category with your sherries and your ports and Pinot de Charente, Marsala, all that good stuff. So essentially, once again, you're making a wine out of grapes. And so what they do is, instead of letting it ferment as long as you would for a classic red wine, they'll just basically throw almost 100% alcohol in it to stop the yeast from eating up all the sugar. So when you stop the fermentation early, that means there's a lot of sugar out there. So if you taste the pairing with this, which is Madeira, you'll see it's quite sweet, and that makes sense because we killed off the yeast before it could turn all that sugar into alcohol. But Madeira goes even one step farther. So Madeira is it's actually a major spirit in American Revolution history, because George Washington was a huge fan of Madeira. And kind of one of the reasons that Madeira is really well known in America is Madeira becomes Madeira because it's essentially been cooked on the way over. So they would have these big barrels of Madeira, and they would put it on the ship. I guess they would probably put it on top of the ship, and it would just bake the whole time. And when they got it, they were like, "Yeah, this is really warm. I bet it's been cooking for weeks, and it's probably terrible." And people tasted it, and they're like, "Yeah, it was pretty good, pretty good. We shall call it Madeira." It's like, it was already called Madeira. And so what's cool about that is Madeira is maybe the most indestructible thing that you can buy in a bottle, because is it going to get oxidized? That's kind of pre-oxidized already. Like, is heat going to destroy it? Well, you blasted it with heat, so it probably is not going to get worse. So people have tasted 100-year-old bottles of Madeira that taste fine. I've had bottles of Madeira open for 2 years, and I'm not sure I could tell you the difference between that and a fresh bottle of Madeira as well. Yeah, the Madeira we poured for you is actually, I don't know how old it is. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. we get some.
It's George Washington.
Yeah. Okay, so where is Madeira? So Madeira is it's technically part of Portugal. But if you look at it, so here, it's over here. So this is Portugal. This is Africa. So Madeira is actually closer to Africa than it is to Portugal itself, which we found out the hard way because we're importing some rum that was made from Madeira. And when I saw how much it cost to ship it, I was like, what's going on here? It's not like you're bringing this from Africa. And they're like, yeah, we kind of are. Okay, so there are basically 4 kinds of Madeira. The one that you're tasting now is Sertial, which is the driest of the Madeiras. I think it's the best of the Madeiras. Most of the time when you're tasting a Madeira matured whiskey, they're using the sweet stuff, the Malmsey. Okay. If you like Madeira, yes, Malmsey if you like sweet, Sertial if you like dry. There's also another kind called Rainwater, which again was done kind of by accident. It seems like all of Madeira was done by accident, where the barrels just got rained on, and so the wood got really wet. Some of the rain actually got into it, kind of lightened it up, and then people are like, "Oh, I bet this is terrible," and then they taste it. And like, pretty good. We shall call it Rainwater. So that's the Rainwater Madeira. It used to be very, very in vogue. Now it's considered kind of like the garbagey Madeira. Okay, so what does Madeira taste like? Well, you just tasted it, so hopefully this makes sense to you. Like fruit syrup, you get some herbal notes, some kind of cereal notes. Sometimes you get a little bit of like fudgy chocolate in there. But Madeira finished whiskey, once again, doesn't taste exactly like Madeira itself. So classic notes for Madeira matured whiskeys: honeycomb, apricot, kind of like stone fruit, peachy kind of notes. You can get some tanginess to it, almost like a tangy orange. The thing with Madeira aging is that it's very, very touchy. It can be great, great, great up to a point. And if you age it too long, all of a sudden it gets really sour. Okay. So unfortunately, there's quite a few Madeira aged whiskeys out there that have been out there too long. People taste it and they're like, I hate Madeira, never gonna buy it. Well, try to find the ones that are well done. Yeah, if you get hit with that sourness right away, no. Okay, they probably let it go. They probably let it go too long. Hopefully you don't feel that way about our about our evidence. Okay, all right, that's our Madeira agricole rum that we're bringing. We're the first independent bottler in the United States to bring Madeira rum in there. And shockingly, what do they age it in? Age it in Madeira barrels.
It tastes nothing like the white.
Yeah.
It tastes good.
Yeah.
So
It
what's
tastes
the-
good. Lori does not like, yeah, I'll say this. One thing we do at the end of every tasting is we ask people what were your favorites. And it seems like there's very much people who like the second one, the double Oloroso one, and then there's the people who really like the Madeira one. And we almost never get anybody that's like, "Ugh, I love both." You know, so I love Madeira, of course. Lori likes the double
Can you
Oloroso.
talk about the Madeira rum? I'm just curious about that.
Sure.
Is that something that's popular in Europe or?
Yeah, it's more popular in Europe. You very rarely see it here in the United States. If you've heard the term agricole rum,
Yeah.
so agricole is a style of rum that's made from cane juice. So actually, you just take the sugar cane, you crush it, you take the juice, and you ferment that. Probably over 95% of rum comes from molasses. So molasses is simply you take the juice, you boil it down, you take all the sugar and all that black crap that's left over that you don't know what to do with. You're like, let's make rum out of it. That's what most rum is. So this agricole rum style is much grassier, much more herbal, much more agricultural, I guess is where it comes from. And there are only 4 countries that are actually allowed to call themselves agricole rum. And they all happen to be former French colonies. So Martinique is the most well-known. Guadeloupe, which also includes Marie Gallant, is the second one. And the other 2 are not, those are obviously Caribbean islands. The other 2 are the island of Réunion, which is in the Indian Ocean off the coast of Africa. And then you have Madeira, as we've seen, is basically off the other coast of Africa. So the reason that we're really proud of bringing this one in is because you almost never, ever see Madeira rum in the United States. And if you do see it, it's usually unaged. So it's like very potent, very funky stuff. But when you let it age in Madeira barrels, it becomes quite beautiful. And I was obsessed with it. We went on a whole mission to find it, and we were able to convince the distiller to let us bring in a single cask of it. So this actually just hit the U.S. shores this morning. So hopefully we should have it bottled in a month or 2.
So it wasn't a broker, you worked directly with them?
No, that one we worked directly with.
We went out of our way at the UK Rum Fest to meet him.
Yeah, I kind of.
And get him to sell us the barrel.
Yeah, it didn't go very well in the beginning because actually I didn't actually know anything about Madeira rum. Sorry to take this tangent into Madeira, but if you ask me about Madeira, I'm going to talk about it forever. So we went to this Barbados rum experience, and there was this guy there so there was a bottle share, and the bottle share was like the greatest rums you'll ever see in your life. And this guy was running around pouring Madeira rum, and he's like, "Hey, I've got rum from Madeira. Would you like to try it?" I was like, "I love rum that's finished in Madeira barrels." And he just was like, "Oh, you're from America, aren't you?" I'm like, "Yeah." "How'd you know?" It's like, "You don't know anything about Madeira rum." So he poured me some, and I lost my mind. I was like, "I must find this in the United States," and nobody had it. So fast forward a year, we go to the UK Rum Fest, and I see the guy who actually distilled this stuff. And so I run up to him. I was like, "You are my #1 target for the show." And he's like, "Security, get this guy out of here." So that went very poorly. So we came back the next day, and I ran into the guy who gave us our first taste of it. I was like, "Hey, Peter, yeah. So yeah, I was gonna ask Pedro if he would give us a cask," and he kind of freaked out, and he's like, "Come with me." So he walked me over, and we were able to talk, and then he was like, "Okay, you're not a psycho, yeah, and you can have this cask." So
I have.
okay, we had to buy it. And the freight costs almost as much as the cask itself.
Wow.
So,
And just some of the fortified wines, to not give them such flack. I drank a lot of Madeira during COVID. It's over a big ice cube. They're much better. Neat room temperature. They're a little stuffy.
yes.
They're a little old lady vibes.
I can
which is-
drink them in my smoothies.
I think they're really good over an ice cube. So don't, this is more in its raw kind of how it affects the whiskey, but they're very inexpensive too. Some
Yeah,
really
and
good ones.
they keep a long time.
Yeah, so
Call me an old lady, it's delicious.
Yeah.
I love
I've
being
always
an old
liked
I am an old
lady.
lady and I don't, but John does, yeah.
Madeira protein shake.
I'll drink into my shakes.
We'll have to do a ready to drink on that Madeira, Madeira shakes. Okay, so let's leave Scotland. Let's go all the way to the Seattle area of Washington State. So we're going to talk about Westland. So our introduction to Westland was kind of strange. We knew we liked Westland, and we heard that the master distiller for Westland was coming to Boston. So we're like, we've got to meet this guy. So we go to the tasting, and there's hardly anybody there. And there's this kid who's just kind of standing around with the Westland logo. And I was like, oh, I guess the master distiller wasn't able to come, and they just sent this flunky. So I felt bad for him. So let's go talk to him. So we were talking to him, and within 2 minutes, I was like, wait a minute. You're Matt Hoffman, aren't you? He's like, yeah, who do you think I was? Like,
You don't want to know.
yeah, I thought you were flunky. I expected Matt Hoffman to be like this 60-year-old guy, but he was this kid.
Younger than my kids.
Yeah. Wow. He was in town for a conference called 30 Under 30, which was the top 30 people under 30 who were influencing their specific industry. So that's why he came. So it was a great chance to pick the brain of someone who had done some pretty astonishing stuff. And at that time, Westland had only been out for a few years. So my question was, how did you get your stuff that tastes so good in such a short period of time in a climate that is just as terrible as Scotland? I mean, there's a reason you don't see 2-year-old Scotch. First of all, it's not legal, but second of all, it's terrible. It takes time when you're in a cooler climate to make your stuff taste good. But he had stuff that was 2 years old, and I was like, how'd you do it? He's like, well, thank you for the compliment. And then he went into this huge diatribe of all the things that they're doing. So long story short, Westland is pulling levers and working with variables that most of these Scotch distilleries wouldn't even think of trying, especially at that time. They're getting a little more experimental now, but so the things he was talking about is, well, first of all, the type of barley that they use. If you've done a tour of Scotland, I'd say, I don't know what, 90% of them are all using the same stuff. It comes 95%. Yeah, it's like a commodity. They're like, barley, whatever. That's, it's our worm tubes that give us all the flavor. And barley is just the raw ingredient.
Hey, don't diss worm toes.
I would never do that. At Westland, they use combinations of 6 different malts, so 6 different kinds of barleys. And a lot of that comes from Matt Hoffman's background is in beer. So all of you beer snobs, like they care about what kind of grains they're using to make their beer. Another thing are the type of yeasts that he uses. When was the last time you talked to a Scotch distiller and they bragged about the yeasts? Well, Matt Hoffman could talk forever about the yeasts that they use. And one of his favorites is this Belgian yeast that's used to make Saison, if you like Saison beers. They also use a different kind of casks. We talked earlier about the Gariana wood. So hardly anybody can get the Gariana wood, but they could because it's in their backyard. It's protected, but they're able to get some carve outs, and they're able to get trees that have fallen down in the middle of the night. I don't know. Somehow are they able to get that. And also fermentation time. So a lot of whiskeys and rums are allowed to ferment for about 3 to 5 days. A lot of the Westlands go as long as 12 days. So when you let it ferment longer, you make less money because you're sitting around going, come on, guys, make the alcohol. But you can also generate a wider range of flavors because the yeast has had a longer time to act upon the barley or the mash that comes out of the barley. So otherwise, it's in Washington, the climate's very much like Scotland. And the classification for this is American single malt. So whereas Scotland is, obviously a Scottish single malt, this is American single malt. So this is about as close to Scotch made in America as you could get. Obviously, you're not allowed to call it Scotch. Westland also spearheaded the whole movement to make American single malt a recognized standard with certain rules on how to make it. So I believe, has that passed yet? Do you know?
No, they're still waiting.
They're still waiting? What are they waiting for? Yeah, so hopefully we'll see that in the next year. Okay, so our story as to how we got these Westlands is kind of funny. So we pretty much tasted all the Westlands. We were going to Seattle to see Brandy Carlisle and Joni Mitchell play her first concert in like 600 years at the Gorge. And one of our friends was like, "Hey, you're gonna go to Westland while you're there?" I'm like, no, we've tasted all the Westland stuff. We've been there. And they're like, "Oh, well, I told a friend that works there that you were coming." We're like, fine. So we go in there, and the friend, so we're tasting stuff. Like, "Oh, yeah, it's good, it's good." And she's like, "I've heard you're an independent bottler." I'm like, "Yeah." Like, "Would you like to buy some Westland casks?" And I was like, I didn't even know you guys sold casks to small independent bottlers like this. So they made an appointment. We came the next day, and so we're tasting all this stuff. We're like, "This doesn't taste anything like any of the bottles that you guys put out." The age statements are really, really old for Westland. So like 8-year, 9-year, 10-year stuff. And the casks that you're aging the stuff in aren't any of the casks that you see in your standard line. So we immediately jumped on 3 of them. And then we asked the question that I always dread asking, like, "Well, what's this going to cost?" Because I assumed it was going to cost a lot. And the price that they quoted us was literally 1/3 of what I thought it would cost.
Wow.
So we're like, "Yeah, maybe we should take more." Yeah, we'll start with 3 and see how they do. So we were really glad to get it. And then, so this was happening around the time when Matt Hoffman was stepping down, and a new manager group was coming in. And sure enough, a week later, we get a phone call from the new general manager of Westland, and he says, "So those casks we sold you, so our team wasn't really aligned in terms of pricing." And like, "Well, which teams are you talking about?" Like, "Well, the home team had a certain idea of what these things were going to cost, but all our regional reps had a different idea." And I kind of knew that because we actually sat in on some barrel picks for some of our other retail people that we know in Boston, and I was looking at their prices. And I was like, "They're kind of expensive." Yeah, the prices we were quoted were basically a big mistake. And they said, "We will honor that price," which is great, "but you can't get any more." So now we're like, "Damn it, we should have gotten more than 3."
Yeah, should have doubled up.
Yeah. So the price. So if you're looking at the pricing of these Westlands, like, how can you sell an 8-year, 9-year Westland for way less than what they sell their stuff for? That's why, because they basically mess up the price. But good. It's a good win for us. Good win for you guys. Westland got screwed. Too bad. Yeah, they'll be totally good.
I don't think they got screwed. They just didn't make as much as they thought.
Yeah, basically my impression is I think these were experiments. These are probably Matt Hoffman experiments. And once he left, they were kind of stuck with these barrels and like, "Well, we only have 1 barrel of this. How are we going to release this? We're Westland. We sell lots of stuff." Whereas a small IP like us is like, "Yes, perfect. We'll take it. We'll take it." All right, so let's get to tasting these.
Any idea what he's doing?
He still has not said. And
I heard he just did the bread lab, like went and worked at the lab and.
Yeah, I heard he was moving into more
Yeah.
baking thing kind
Yeah.
of thing, and maybe beer.
yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if it's not whiskey related at all. So this is what we are calling our Seattle music series, and we're doing this to honor Seattle, obviously, because that's where Westland comes from. So we have 3 bottles. The first one is our Brandy Carlisle bottle. The second one is our Kurt Cobain Nirvana bottle, and the third one is our Jimi Hendrix bottle. Obviously, we can't put that on the label. So if you look, you'll see that there's these little silhouettes on the guitars, and that'll give you a clue as to who these are from. Okay, so our first one, if you'd like to start tasting, is Stories. So Stories uses a 5 malt recipe, so 5 different kinds of barley, and it's aged in a Mount Gay rum cask. So the thing about rum casks, I personally hate rum aged whiskey. I think in most cases it doesn't work well. Every now and then you get a great one. But the second we tasted this one, I thought, "This is a rum cask?" And they said, "Yeah, it's from Mount Gay." I was like, okay. Mount Gay is probably the scotchiest of Barbados rums. So it's not overly sweet. It's it's definitely on the dry, elegant side. So when you're tasting this, you'll probably get some rum influence, but it's definitely not like a molasses bomb like you get with some rum finishes. The other reason we were surprised is you almost never see anything that's aged in a Mount Gay cask, because Mount Gay does not like to give up anything. They don't like to give up their stuffed independent bottlers. They don't want to trade barrels. So we're trying to figure out, how did Westland get a Mount Gay cask? So the Westland rep is like, well, you know who owns Westland? I was like, yeah, it's Remy. Like, well, you know who owns Mount Gay? It's like, it's Remy. Like, oh, okay. So basically your dad said, come on, kids, play with each other. Share your barrels with each other. Okay, so this one is 8 years. We bottled it at 8 years, 11 months, and 20 days. So you may ask, why didn't you just wait another 11 days so you could call it 9 year? We had a tasting that we had to get it ready for. So it's almost 9 years, legally 8 years. It's cask strength at 55% ABV. It spent 4 years and 7 months in a Mount Gay cask. So you'll see with these Westland maturations, they've been in these casks a really, really long time.
That's amazing.
Yeah. It's like the last one's mind blowing. So
Excuse me, is that 4 years? Is the 8 year encompass the 4 years, 7 months?
yes,
Okay.
yeah. So it's been 3 years. So
Probably a nice.
120 days.
John,
Yeah,
could you go, just for online, could you go over the 5 malt again?
Yes, I have a slide
Oh,
on that. Yeah, don't worry, I'll get as nerdy as you can stand. So the what else about this one? Oh, I think that's it. Okay, yeah, so that's stories. That's our brand.
I'm obsessed with Brandy Carlisle. You guys can't tell, so.
Good, thank you. I should mention that we've sold almost all of the Westlands that we have. So I think we're down to 2 or 3 cases left. So not to get too salesy, but if you do like it, this would be a really good day to get it.
Yeah, we're doing Baytown Spirits in Rochester tomorrow. I think that'll be the end of it. So.
Yeah. Okay, so 5 malts, perfect segue. So 5 different types of barley. So they use, the one that they use the most is what they call the Washington Select Pale Malt. So it's the lightest of their barleys, and it's the most similar to a Scottish barley, Scottish Highland barley. I'm not going to go into all the different types and all the different characteristics, but basically you're looking at different strains of barley, but almost as important, if not more important, is how they prepare it, so how they roast it. So for those of you who like coffee, you'll know that it's not always the bean. It's like, okay, is it dark French roast? Well, let's just burn the hell out of it. Okay. So you come all the way down to this pale chocolate malt. That's probably one that they roasted longer to bring out more of those chocolatey, fudgy flavors out of it. But yeah, to go through it real quickly. So you have your pale malt, your Munich malt, which is more of a beer type malt. They have a secret Wisconsin malt. Westland doesn't even know what is in this, so it's kind of a secret. Your brown malt, which is more of your nuttier hazelnut pecan, and then you have the chocolate malt, which obviously tastes, it does taste like chocolate, but it almost tastes more like coffee, which is not too surprising considering they roast it using a very similar process to roasting coffee.
So you've got percentage on there for the pale malt. Do they vary the proportions of the other ones then to go ahead and build a different character for their whiskey? Or
Yes, and you'll see the next two have different, they use different malts in different proportions. But yeah, the pale malt consists of the 70% of their classic 5 malt recipe. 5 malts basically their standard recipe. Okay, so this one is actually the Nirvana cask. I put up the wrong slide for this, I apologize. So it is our pale malt. So they're only using that first one, the Scottish Highland equivalent malt, and they put it in PX. So that's why you've got the what looks basically like a little glass of syrup sitting next to it. So that's your Pedro Jimenez, cherry. Yes.
Yeah, so it actually looks like this, but when liquor store in Boston did buy 4 cases and they created their own label, that's why this is it, but this is ours.
Yeah, so we'll be talking a little bit later about our private label program. So basically, if you buy 4 cases of something, you can put your own label on it. So that's what this store is. Okay. So this is at 59% ABV.
Good.
Yes.
And the retail on this is also around the $85 to $90 range. So this spent all 8 years and 8 months in PX. Okay, so that's an extraordinarily long time to have it aged in a sherry cask. And you can tell right away, like, okay, this is your sherry bomb. You know, if you really like those dark, heavy sherry flavors, this is the one to get. This is actually the most popular of the 3, to be honest.
That would have a little taste of the sherry. Right, with it.
Yes, yeah, that's it. Yeah, you have a PX sherry next to it. Okay, to give you an idea of how cheaply we were able to get this barrel, so K&L, which is a really, really good liquor store chain out in California, they do really, really good picks. They did cask number 2479, which was a pale malt aged in PX, which sounds very familiar because that's what our Bloom bottle is. And our number was 2478. So it's 1 over, which meant they're basically sitting next to each other. And I actually had a friend who bought this K&L 2479. And he says, this was a legendary release for K&L. It's long been sold out. It's one of my favorites. So I was like, dude, bring it in. We'll do a side by side and we'll fight it out and see which one's better. So we did it. We did a blind tasting, and I picked the K&L. Everybody else picked ours, so I'm the loser. I was wrong. They sold theirs for $110 and sold out very quickly. You know, ours is going I think 85, 90 range as well. So yeah, if you like that one, this one's a good buy. So flavor characteristics, if you're tasting the PX itself, yeah, it's syrup. You got your raisins, you got your figs, you got your jam. Somebody said it would be great if you just poured this over pancakes. You know, I'm not sure I could drink a lot of it without getting instant diabetes, but it does taste good in small quantities.
It's the perfect size.
Yes, that's about all you can have. That's probably all you should drink, to be honest. Okay, our last Westland is called Voodoo. So, by the way, the names of all of the bottles are basically knockoffs of songs. So, Brandy Carlisle's The Story became Stories, Nirvana's In Bloom became Bloom, and Hendrix's Voodoo Child became Voodoo. Okay, so this is a really interesting cask. So, this one uses peated malt. So you are definitely gonna get the smoke on this. But I think the nature of the peat is quite different. It's not like your typical Isla peat, which is very earthy. You get your seaweed, you get your iodine. It's heavy. It's heavy and super smoky. This I find to be a little more floral. I mean, it's still smoky, but it's a little lighter. It's a little grassier, a little more herbal than your classic Isla peat. This came in at 57% ABV, and it's aged in a French oak cask. So again, French oak is your more spicy. Did you just grab a bottle?
I wasn't interrupting anyone.
No, I'm just saying that, yes, I'd love to see that. Yeah, grab it while you can. So this was aged in Banyos. So has anybody had Banyos before? Anybody knows what Banyos is?
No.
Okay, good. I didn't either. So Banyos is yet again a French dessert wine. It is made in a similar way. You know, basically you're making wine and you throw in alcohol to kill off the yeast. So there's still a lot of sugar in there. So if you taste the Banyos, so there's a serving of Banyos there, you'll definitely get the sweetness on it. They do also a cooking process similar to the Madeira. But if you were to ask somebody what does it taste like, I would say if you've had like Ruby port, but kind of give it more tannins, more structure, kind of make a more mature version of Ruby port. That's basically what Bam is. I think it's really, really lovely. And also another price comparison, again, 85 to 90 for the Voodoo. So Single Cask Nation, which I'm sure some of you are familiar with, really great independent bottler. They put out a cask that was also a peated Westland that was aged in Pinot de Charente. So instead of Banyuls, they did Pinot de Charente. Don't forget Pinot de Charente. That's our next tasting. So they put this out. This was about, I want to say 3 months ago. They put it out at $125 for a bottle. It sold out in an hour. So if you like peated Westlands, yeah, this is a spectacular bottle. It's great. You should definitely get that, but you should get ours first because it's cheap.
That was gone. I need to get that one.
Yeah, that's
Secondary.
long sold out. But yeah, that definitely comparable. Okay, any last questions or comments on the
Oh,
Westlands?
just so you know, our pricing, I told online, and it's, all the bottles that we have are on the barrels back here. And we'll get all of the cords out of your way before, so it's not an obstacle course, but, all the Linkwoods are $85.99, all three. All the Westlands are $89.99, and then the rum we're about to try is $79.99.
Oh, that's a really good price on that.
That's cheaper than Boston.
Yeah, we should pick some up, honey. I'm only half joking. We're getting really low on the purple.
Yeah, we're down to our last few cases of that too.
Okay, so the last bottle, so we're gonna move from Seattle and we're gonna go down to the island of Barbados, the birthplace of rum. So this is from Foursquare. So anybody who knows good rum, worships Foursquare. So Foursquare is known for, they have a kind of a unique process. They do two kinds of stills. They'll do column still. So column still generates your kind of more lighter, your more elegant spirits. And they also do pot still. So pot still gives you your heavier, your oilier, more intense spirits. And then they'll blend the two together. And that's their house style. So anytime we have a whiskey drinker that's like, yeah, I don't like rum, it's sweet, it's Captain Morgan, boo, terrible. We'll give them Foursquare. And sometimes we won't even tell them that it's rum. Like, hey, we got this cool new whiskey from Barbados, give it a try. Foursquare is a good gateway drug if you're coming from whiskey into premium level rum. So this is a 9-year Foursquare. And the cool thing about this is that it spent about 5 months. Well, first it spent a year in a rye cask. So this is going to be a little spicier, a little more herbal than you get from a typical Foursquare. Kind of cool. And it spent 5 months in a Pinot de Charente cask. Okay. So if you're detecting, kind of a cognac, kind of a grape, this beautiful layer of fruit that's on top of the, the highly structured oaky rum, you're tasting the right things. So Pinot de Charente is simply, let's say that you're a cognac maker. So you make your, you distill it, and you've got your eau de vie, which is your unaged cognac. So you're doing a run, and then, oops, I accidentally threw in some fresh grape juice into this cognac, and it's not cognac anymore. It ends up being this beautiful blush-colored dessert wine. It's really lovely stuff. It is a little on the sweet side, but if you are really into cocktails, one thing that I always like to try is to swap out vermouth and put in Pinot de Charente, and then put a stupid name on the cocktail and say that I invented it. You can also do that with.
That's the most important thing you just told me.
Yes, I always try to give practical advice so that you can look really
So wait, so
awesome
say
in
that
front of your
again?
friends.
You put.
So so take the Pinot de Charente,
Yeah.
okay, and swap that out for vermouth or any other dessert. If you have a sherry cocktail, put in Pinot de Charente. You can actually. The sugar level on it is actually high enough that you can sometimes swap out the simple syrup for a Pinot de Charente too.
Is it readily available?
Yes, you can generally see it at if a place has a good selection of wine, they will almost always have a Pinot de Charente as well. And it's not expensive. None of these dessert wines are expensive.
And this is the one you pair with the chocolate. So what I like to do is take a sip of the rum, take a bite of the chocolate, take another sip of the rum, finish the chocolate.
Alright.
But it's up to you. You can do it how you want.
Yeah, so while we were at this UK Rum Fest, there was a seminar by a chocolatier where she was pouring spirit, and then she was tasting us on the truffles that she had made from that spirit. So Lorri, of course, after this, ran up to her with a bottle of purple cane and said, "Can you make this into a purple chocolate?" And she said, "Yes, I can." So we immediately ran around the conference and started bragging to all our rum friends, like, "Yeah, we're getting rum chocolates from this chocolatier called Exotic Tramp out of London." And so we told our friend Eric Key, who owns Holmes Key, which is what I think is the best independent bottler of rum right now. And he got this look on his face. It was like, "Yeah, I know that one." We're like, "Why is it not good?" He's like, "Well, I placed an order for these chocolates, and a really, really big order, and it came all the way from London, and it arrived at our house, and my daughter picked up the box, and it seemed really light, so she chucked it into recycling."
And she ordered like 3 times more than we got.
Yeah,
so-
they ordered a whole lot. So Eric literally drove around town to all the recycling centers and the dumps trying to find the chocolates and never found it. So he's very bitter about his chocolates. Yeah,
But
ours did.
teenagers recycling.
Yes, yes, that's what you get for teaching your
What
kids to recycle.
teenagers recycle?
I know, it's probably the only
The
one in
one
the country.
time.
Yeah.
So our chocolate is not recycled.
Online, let us know where the name came from.
Purple cane.
No, exotic tramp.
Oh, exotic
No.
tramp.
We don't know. It's
I think
kinda hard
it's-
for me to post about that on Facebook because I feel kind of guilty.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
probably a very personal question, and I didn't really want to know.
We didn't
Um,
ask, but she's a very sweet lady. Very, very sweet Scottish woman. Exotic tramp. Yeah.
But we will say where the name came from. So we're big Prince fans.
Okay.
So we decided to test our ability to not get sued. So instead of Purple Rain.
I see a lot of music. I see a lot of music.
Yes, yes.
We are music people.
And Lorri actually came up with the name for this, because I kept saying we need a name that says something about grapes and then something about sugar. And so I had all these words listed down. I was looking at it for an hour and I couldn't figure it out. And Lorri was walking by, I was like, "Yeah, purple cane." I was like, "Oh." That's why it's purple cane. That's why the label looks like the cover of Purple Rain. And this is also why we're trying to sell this very quickly before Prince's estate finds out. Because Prince's estate is famously litigious.
Yeah.
They used to sue you if you put any of his music into a YouTube
this is being
video.
recorded, right?
And on
Yeah, that's
YouTube.
fine, right?
So, fire sale.
This is the final bottle of Purple Cane. On sale, fire sale. We do have a friend who's a patent lawyer, so he knows about intellectual property. So I asked him, like, are they really gonna come after us? And he's like, "Well, if I was his lawyer, I would hit you with a cease and desist in 5 seconds, and you would have to pull all the bottles off the shelves." So
So sell them.
yeah, so buy, please buy them, but otherwise, even if we do get sued, we can probably use it for publicity, and we'll win one way.
But aren't the chocolates good?
Delicious.
Yeah.
Very good.
Okay, so here's the part where we go around the room and everybody tells us what your favorites are. Okay, can we start with you, sir?
Imagine the acquiescence.
Ascendance.
Ascendance, okay.
I don't like glasses.
All right.
Acquiescence.
Ah,
There's a
so
whole other.
you're the Sherry guys.
I say after a bunch of these.
Yeah, you're on Team Sherry.
Westland Stories.
Stories, okay, very good. You, sir?
Well, I was gonna go with stories until I tried the purple cane. I just really
Yeah,
liked
that was very.
All right, rum convert. Sir?
What's your favorite?
My favorite is your
Stories.
stories.
Stories, okay, very good.
But I'm gonna buy the wrong story.
Yeah.
Voodoo, okay. Pete. That's what you include. Stories.
It's also my favorite.
Eminence, Madeira. See?
You got one, Dave.
Yeah, I got one.
Yeah, I go with the eminence or the stories. Both, they're completely different. But
Yeah, I was gonna say, they're like not related whatsoever.
The malt flavor is terrific in the stories, and just like with yours.
Okay. Yeah, Stories was having a good night. Let's see that. You like Stories? Stories again.
Another one.
Really?
See,
Wow. Okay.
I'm right.
Bloom.
Bloom.
Wait, we haven't
Okay.
done online.
Yeah, heavy sherry on that one. Emergence. Good. Oh, purist. You don't like when I mess with stuff. You want to do it the way it was made.
Same old story.
Stories.
Did you pay these people?
Some people got double pours.
Yeah, okay, there we go. Bloom, okay, very good.
I got up to get the bottle of voodoo,
So-
so I.
Okay.
Ascendance.
Ascendance. Okay, another sugar.
Purple cane and emergence.
Purple cane and emergence. Yeah, very different.
You like it?
You know the Bloom, but Emergence is just really good.
Bloom and emergence. Okay, so you really like the finishes. Okay, your finishes.
I think emergence.
Emergence? Okay,
Yeah.
good.
And online is all, I'm sorry, you were talking.
No.
I think I just did a tiny tasting, but of that, the emergence, I
Emergence.
really like.
Okay, good. Wow, very, very balanced.
Online was heavy scotch, so Luke like Ascendance. Ann and Peter was emergence. Peter emergence, so two emergence. Kathy and Rich Cogan Ascendance, and then Stories. Yeah, so it was all the Linkwoods.
Oh, wow, okay, good.
We did want to tell you, if you buy any bottle from any of them tonight, you can take home 3 chocolate truffles. We'll also leave some here for your online order in advance. But you get 3 more chocolate truffles
Ooh.
if you buy any bottle. We don't care which one.
Yeah, doesn't have to be purple.
Except for my Park List 12.
Any of our bottles,
Oh,
any
sorry.
stained glass bottle. Not any bottle.
Okay, so we got some casks coming up later this year. So these are all rum
That one's
casks.
gonna be food.
Yeah, so this is so last
They're
year
also no
last year we
more
released
litigious.
Yowie, which was a 16-year-old Australian rum. If you've never had Australian rum, Beanley Distilleries making some of the greatest rum. So that was a 16-year-old at
There is still-
68%.
There's still some.
Oh, you have Yowie here. Okay, okay, yeah. We're getting really low on that original Yowie. So this is the sequel. So it's gone from 16 years to 17 years, and it's gone from 68% to 69%. So hopefully this is one of those sequels that beats out the original.
I got number 2.
We also have other rums coming from Reunion, which we mentioned earlier. Ecuador, Netherlands, we have a Martinique, one from Guyana, and the Madeira that we mentioned earlier. We also are considering some scotches coming in. So a 14-year Daluane, a 30-year North British single grain, and a 10-year Ben Nevis.
Oh, we love Daluane.
Yeah, that's good. This
And Ben
Daluane
Nevis.
is really good.
What are the deals with those? Like what barrels types?
We don't have all the information on it. I think it's pretty standard bourbon barrels. Yeah, bourbon casks. Yeah. Cheers. We also have a Queen Chair coming from Privateer. That'll be our 3rd Privateer release.
In a new rip barrel.
Yep.
And we also have some bonus pours. Unfortunately, we couldn't bring all of them, but I will show you what we got.
Oh.
So if you like PX, we have a 18-year Balvenie that's in PX. This is travel only. So
But we should have talked before this.
you get first. If you like Oloroso, if you like the Oloroso, we have a 15-year Tobermory. This is the 1798, so it's one of the rare Tobermories.
That was awesome.
Okay, here, this is yours.
That was awesome.
Yeah, that was my favorite Tobermories. I have a real weakness for whiskeys that were made in distilleries known for peat, but release an unpeated version. So this is basically unpeated Lecheg. So if you like Lecheg, ever wonder what it tastes like without the smoke, beautiful, beautiful stuff. If you like the Linkwoods, this is a 21-year Linkwood from Signatory. Frankly, it's better than ours, but it should be because it's 21 years old, right?
Just pour that.
And if you like purple cane, So this is Foursquare. So instead of being aged in Pinot de Charente, this is aged in Sauterne. So Sauterne, I think, is the most difficult maturation to get right. When you hit it perfectly, it's gorgeous. The other 99% of the time, it's garbage.
So you're here tomorrow for all of these pours, or? is
Yeah,
this-
no, everybody doesn't get all one. You can come up and.
Yeah,
pick one
just come
and
up.
we'll
We'll,
pour you a short
yeah,
pour.
we're happy. We're
I'm
happy.
Not
just
passing
kidding, I'm
them
just
around the
joking.
whole. So when you show up in person on a windy night, you should get some extra rum, right?
We have cots in the patio. It's raining a little.
They're tiny, tiny glass.
We're not gonna care.
So this Foursquare Sauterne comes from the Netherlands, so not available in this country.
And this isn't tequila style where you put your neck back. Recording about.
I don't think you have those kind of customers here.
You'd be surprised. At times, right? At times.
Okay, so last few bookkeeping things. So we do have a private label program. So anything that we're releasing, if you go to our website, racingglasses.com/private label, if you buy 4 cases of something, you can design your own label. You can put your face on it. You can put your dog's face on it. You can.
You guys can go all in as a group
Yeah.
and buy 4 cases together.
That's what we got
And put
Charles
our
for.
faces on it.
And finally, if you like to be a taste of the day and you'd like to be notified about other sales or other things that are coming up, you can scan this, or you can just go to racingglasses.com/list to get on our mailing list. And we don't send very much mail at all.
Yeah, and we don't sell outside of Bristol Spirits in Baytown in New York, so you have to, but we can get it to Holly and Charles easily.
Yeah, we'll be there. We'll do this.
Okay, so that's it. Thank you very much.
All right, yeah.
Oh,
Right,
I wanna
we're
get
gonna-
on the,
we're
I wanna
gonna
get on
cut
the
off
list.
the- Hold on, hold on 1 second. We haven't seen the list yet.
Before everybody starts walking
Oh,
around.
thank you.
We're gonna stop the recording, so those people online, just FYI, we're gonna stop the recording. And I am gonna kill the Zoom, just because we're gonna have to keep track of what's going on here, so thank you for joining tonight.
Thank you.
Hope you enjoyed tasting number 150. Lots more to come. Wait till we get to tasting 300. All right, see you guys.
Yeah, let us know before everybody walks up front, let's move these cables, and I don't even know how.
Okay.
I don't want people to break their necks in here. Yeah.